Hi everyone, Anthony Fantano here, Internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Daniel Avery album, Drone Logic. Before we get into this LP, I know some of you are still a little sad, still a little down in the dumps, but hey, come on, it's another day, another album to listen to. Put a smile on your face. It's alright, man. Chill. I love you. Daniel Avery is a UK-based electronic music producer. He has released this full-length debut of his Drone Logic right here on Fantasy Records earlier this year, and I was pretty impressed with what this guy was doing with techno and house music. From a technical and from a sonic standpoint, I wouldn't say Daniel Avery is reinventing the wheel here or violently burning down the status quo. Even though he's not blowing me away with a really experimental take on these genres, he is delivering a very long album of very well assembled tracks. The beats on this LP have a lot of rigid, robotic techno characteristics, but are still undeniable to the hips. A lot of drive in these rhythms, and I think the bass lines are especially bouncy. It's really nice to hear beats that have such a synthetic aesthetic, but still appeal to those very deep, gotta move to this primal instincts. There are quite a few vocal snippets on this thing, moments like, water jump. Weird little cuts of spoken word that play throughout a lot of these tracks. For the most part, the vocals add to the very stone-faced, near emotionless vibes that this album gives off through a lot of its sounds. Even the sustained singing notes on the opening track here that are sampled and looped over and over and over are manipulated and distorted and feel so grainy that they are just merely a shell of their former selves, in terms of feeling human anyway. The most tender vocal cut on this entire LP is the whispered singing on the closing track, Knowing We'll Be Here. It's pretty nice to hear a techno album, an electronic music album, that starts off so just lockstep and chilly, warm up as it progresses. Relatively anyway, like on the very gently pulsating, soft, and melodic track Simulrec, or the track New Energy, which gets progressively more and more intense and noisy and fiery as it goes on, with a very krautrock-inspired beat. And there are a lot of sharp and noisy drones that occur on some of these tracks too, adding a bit of emotional heat and intensity. As far as the melodies go on this LP and the counterpoint with the bass lines and some of the synth chords that pop up, Daniel Avery's approach is very simple. But there is purpose here, because all of these elements do add up into some catchy synth sequences or just a really potent, moody mix of sounds. And structurally, these tracks justify 5, 6, 7, 8-minute song lengths, with the theory that if you start out with a great groove, you can keep things interesting by varying the rhythms, dropping out ideas, introducing new ideas, or slowly layering tracks for a gradual climax. And even though Drone Logic to an extent is easy to sum up as an album, it doesn't take away from the magic and the tension of listening to these songs in the moment. Like the song Water Jump, which has multiple phases, and all of them leave me feeling like I'm listening to the soundtrack to driving at night at very high speed through a neon-lit city 1,000 years into the future. And things get especially epic when a few very grainy minor tone chords enter the picture on top an already growing pile of beats, synth leads, vocal samples, and some bow 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 bass. And some tracks do hit harder than others, with some very punchy rhythms and hard-ass bass, like the song Naive Response, whose low end is very heavy and rubbery as the song progresses, with its bass line just bouncing over and over and over. Or the song These Nights Never End, whose groove is very lightly kissed with these sharp, distorted, oddly placed synth sequences and these eerily sustained notes. I will say that the assembly of sounds on this LP lacks a certain finesse that you might find in the productions of an artist like John Hopkins or Panther du Prince. However, I do kind of enjoy the hard entrances and exits of new sounds and ideas on these songs, because it does add to the already enjoyably rigid characteristics that these songs have to offer. And while there are some sharp, noisy drones on these tracks that I do like, and I did kind of expect given that the name of this album is Drone Logic, for the most part, the drones do feel more like an accent or a side dish, not a main attraction. The most spotlight a drone gets on this LP is on the 1-minute interlude track, Spring 27. And even though the drones do add character to this LP, they're not exactly enough to save some of these tracks from their very, very repetitive selves, like the song All I Need, where even though the drone is entering the picture and changing things up slightly, there's not enough variation in the instrumentation underneath that to kind of keep things feeling tense. And the song All I Need as well, to me, is lacking in a bit of drive to progress and kind of change the sound of this song as it plods along. So yeah, there are a few tracks on here that do feel a little less developed, a little less detailed than others, and I did think the closer on here, while good, was sort of anticlimactic for a finishing track. That and the fact that I felt like there really could have been a little more sonic adventure going on with these tracks. These were the only major issues I had with this album. Though, again, I don't think Daniel Avery is reinventing the wheel here. He has put together a series of very, very well-crafted techno tracks with great grooves, rhythms, bass lines, synth sequences. I am feeling a strong 7 to a light 8 on this thing. Ha! Transition. But if you've given this LP a listen, what did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? And why am I whispering? What should I review next? And that's it. Anthony Fantano, Daniel Avery, Drone Logic, forever.